In the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, amen. I told you I was going to talk about Psalm 50 and also fasting. So we'll talk about fasting first. So first we'll talk about some practical things. This is Sunday of the Publican and Pharisee. Next week is completely fast-free. And I explained it in the sermon, but some of you might have been here. So the reason why we don't fast after the Publican and Pharisee, because the Pharisee, really thought he was all that because he fasted, right? And he depended on his fasting as righteousness. Fasting is not righteousness. Fasting gets you to righteousness. Fasting is absolutely necessary. But it's not something to brag about. It's something to do because you need it. So absolutely, positively, we need fasting, but we have to have it in the proper perspective. Fasting is a means to an end. It's not the end itself. It's not something to be proud of. It's something that we need to open up our hearts to God. Very critical. Absolutely critical. You can't be saved unless you're going to try to fast. You just can't. Maybe somebody who doesn't, I don't know, maybe God saves somebody in some way that only He understands. But in normal life, you must fast. You must struggle to fast because it really opens up your heart to God. But next week we don't fast at all. So, the general fasting is on Wednesdays and Fridays throughout the year, with a few exceptions, like this Wednesday and this Friday. Only a few. A general Wednesday is what's called a strict fast. By fasting, we do not mean you stop eating all food. Like you don't eat any food for the day or anything. It means you don't eat certain foods. The main food that you give up first is meat. That would be beef, chicken, pork, armadillo, whatever, right? Mammals and birds. People say, can you eat alligator? I really think alligator counts as but if you want to eat alligator, you have at it. If you can catch an alligator, you can eat it. Okay?
What about fish?
Okay, we'll talk about fish in a minute.
What about crickets?
You can eat crickets all you want.
Okay.
You can get crickets, you can eat crickets, grasshoppers, you can eat locusts, you could eat mud bugs, you could eat shrimp, all that stuff. So the general thing is not to eat meat, and then the next thing in line that we would give up would be milk products, animal products. So milk products and cheese, eggs, and also eggs, right? Now, is honey an animal product? No, a bee is. I guess a bee's, maybe it's technically an animal, but no.
Bees are fasting if you want to eat
bees. You can eat bees too. You could eat bees if you wanted to. So no, honey is not an animal product in this. It's any dairy and of course eggs. Okay, and then the next thing that we would give up would be fish. So fish is finned sea animals, right? Water animals, if they have fins. If they don't have fins, you can eat them anytime you want. You can eat any amount of shrimp, lobster, scallops, mollusks, clams, abalone. If you can dive, 80 feet down and get abalone off the California coast, you can have it. So that's considered those invertebrates. You can have them. They don't have fins. Okay. Then the next thing would be wine and oil. Now, in our modern interpretation, we have all these oils that'll kill you dead, like all these seed oils. And so people say it only applies to olive oil. Well, that's the oil they had back then, right? They had olive oil. They didn't have rapeseed oil. They didn't have canola oil. They didn't have corn oil. They had olive oil. That's it, right? And I think avocados are a new world food. They didn't have avocado oil. They had olive oil. That's it. So when they gave up oil, they gave up olive oil. And people have now in the modern era said it's olive oil that you give up. Well, really, the intention is to give up oil. But we have sort of a combination made because we're all a bunch of snowflakes. And that people say no olive oil, but other oils are allowed. You can be as strict as you want to be with that. I think it's a great idea to not eat other oils at all. But, in my own family, my wife cooks with some oils during fasting periods, but not olive oil. And she cooks it, I eat it. So, we don't make a big deal about it. The next thing would be alcoholic beverages. Now, there's a thing that people this is another kind of thing that people do about this. They say there's a saying, beer is bread, right? So I can drink beer. I can't drink wine. And from wine, of course, you get liquor, right? If you distill wine, you get liquor, right? So you can't have wine and liquor, but you can have beer. All right. If you really want a beer that bad, but I think it's better to go no alcohol on non-alcohol days.
I have kind of a loaded question.
You have a loaded question? Loaded question with alcohol. Are you loaded right now? Okay, it's pretty early in the day to be that loaded.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Why is it that, like, in a modern context, why are animal products excluded? Like, I understand historically, like, just...
In a modern context? Well, I mean, in a modern or an ancient context, what is the high energy food and the more passionate food? Meat.
Yeah, that's
because animals have passions like we do, right? I mean, not as bad as us, but they do have passions, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a food that we know by experience. If we indulge in it too much, it can cause passions. More, it's worse to eat a lot of meat than it is to eat a lot of rice for your passions.
Just because it seems like health is kind of sacrificed with that. I don't know. I don't know.
If you're eating vegetables for 40 days, you're not going to die.
That's true.
You know?
I think that's also one point of the fast is not to think of your physical health as much.
Yeah, I mean, you're not doing things to make yourself sick, but meat is not an absolute necessity in life. Really, especially in ancient cultures, meat was important, but it wasn't very often. If they were lucky, they eat meat once a week anyway, or once every other week. So in the modern day, of course, you can get a hamburger anytime you want, right? From any street corner, just about. So there's not a necessity to eat meat for health, especially if you don't eat it for 40 days or on a Wednesday or a Friday. It's not a big deal at all, you know.
You say that maybe the only cases would be like severe autoimmune disorders.
If people have medical needs, then their diet is adjusted accordingly, you know, absolutely. But in that case, let's say that you have to have a meat diet because of allergies or because of autoimmune or which is could be the same thing. You could have because of diabetes, because of obesity, and you want to lose weight, and this is what the diet that you prescribe. Well, okay, so you eat meat, but you don't eat your favorite cut of meat, right? You don't say, oh, I'm going to have great steak on the grill all the time. I'm going to eat a hamburger patty and fry it, just pan fry it, that's it. Or I'm going to have tuna fish out of the can. You know, you eat it like it's medicine. And then you don't eat for your belly. You don't eat just for the taste. And then I think that's following the spirit of the fast.
Mm-hmm.
Father, can I add one thing? That the church does not prescribe 40 days of Moses or Jesus or Elijah type fasting.
Mm-mm.
But if you eat according to the church, you will be hungry. Because vegetables go through you quick and empty out of your stomach quickly. And so after 2 hours, you're going to be hungry again, and you're going to experience hunger through the fast. It is a fasting mimicking diet, is what it is.
And it doesn't hurt to be hungry. It doesn't hurt to be hungry, really. If you have extreme needs, like, you know, you have hypoglycemia. Well, I tell these, you know, women that are tiny and they can fall out in liturgy if they don't have something to eat in the morning. I tell them, eat something in the morning. Of course. We don't want you literally falling unconscious before communion. I mean, that's happened to us before. I tell them, absolutely, you should eat something, but you eat a little something with some protein, some fat, a little bit of carbohydrate, something simple, right? So that then, and not for taste, but just because you want to be able to make it through the liturgy, right? So these accommodations, you would talk to your confessor, and he arranges something for you. It's not a big deal. The important thing is that we follow the spirit of the fast, which is that we don't live for our belly, right? Our belly helps us to live, but we don't live for our belly. And it's very important. Gluttony is a sin that leads to many, many other sins. If there's gluttony, people will have problems with lust, with anger, with judgment, etc. So if you cut off that gluttony, you might be hungry, but you'll feel so much better. And I find in the middle of the fast, I generally, at least, I try to eat only one meal at the evening, and I find I feel wonderful. I might be hungry, but if I drink a cup of coffee, the hunger goes away. Or if I, drink 12 ounces of water, it goes away. You might want to try it. If you haven't done it before, try it, and you will be very amazed. So, the purpose of fasting is totally spiritual. It's so that your body is in subjection to the soul. Because right now we're in a situation where our body is many times warring against the soul, and the soul is warring against the body. Since both are imperfect right now, they don't always act in concert with one another. The next life they'll be in perfect sync with one another, but not now. So we have to tame our body so that our soul has just more clarity. So that's the real main reason why we're fasting. And the advantage, did somebody say something? No. The main advantage, the way to fast is just obey the church. Just obey. That's a huge advantage of fasting. Just do what you're told. Church says don't eat meat, cheese, eggs, wine, oil, etc., right? Especially don't eat oil if you cannot pronounce the ingredients list. Don't do that. If it's this big a word, don't eat it. Especially if there's lots and lots of hydroxys and stuff on it, don't do it, because that means it's an artificial oil. And you just obey. And obedience is so awesome. It is the secret sauce that people don't know. Obedience is fantastic. Parents should be obedient to their children. Not that when their child asks for ice cream, they always give it, but that they're obedient to the needs of their child. Absolutely. We should be obedient to one another. A priest should be obedient to his flock. There's hundreds of times I've done something I didn't really want to do, or I was tired or whatever, to be obedient. It's really good for us to be obedient. Super, super necessary to grow in the spiritual life. And fasting is a perfect way to be obedient. It says don't eat it. Don't eat it. Perhaps you're terrible at fasting. Well, I guess try not to eat it. And try to, and talk to me about it. Don't just consider it no big deal. Right? It is a big deal. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You're not going to get hit by lightning if you put creamer in your coffee. But, you can probably work towards not having creamer in your coffee. It's not that tough. And you'll be amazed when you follow the fast that there's this baseline spirituality that's always with you. So if you have a bad day and you're cranky, or you didn't say your prayers in the morning, or you had an argument or whatever, but it's a Wednesday, you've at least fasted. And there's a certain stability that comes from it. It's not like you say, oh, well, I fasted, so it's okay, the fact that I yelled at my wife. No, that's not okay. It's not okay at all. But it would be much worse if you didn't fast and yelled at your wife. Right? Because you've got to have something to fall back on, seriously.
I have a question. Is there a fasting option to abstain?
Yes, but I think that sort of thing should be done in consultation with your spiritual father. So I've had people that have asked me, this is not exactly your question, but I'll get to it in a second. So they've said, I want to fast on Mondays for the angels. So normally we fast on Wednesdays and Fridays. Monastics often fast on Monday throughout the year. It's called the Angels Fast because we commemorate the angels on Monday. And invariably it's somebody that dude, you're hardly ever at vigil. You're late to church half the time. Your life is chaotic and you're telling me you want to fast on Monday? No. Get everything else together first. Fasting on Monday should be for a person who's already, that is squared away, right? And then add something. Now, as far as not eating anything, okay, if you have the constitution for it, then don't eat anything, but do it in consultation with your spiritual father. Don't just do it. I actually, my constitution says that if I don't eat, I might be hungry, but nothing else happens to me. I don't get low blood sugar. I don't get dizzy. Whether I eat or don't eat, it doesn't seem to really affect how I can function, right? So, but you might not be able to do that. If you can do that, okay, all right. Talk to your spiritual father and say, maybe for Great Lent, can I not eat until after Vespers? So, of course, you might not have Vespers every day, but Vespers be around the 3-4 o'clock hour, and then there would be dinner. So, you eat dinner at 5 o'clock and only eat dinner. I'll tell you what, a really good abstinence that everybody can do, and it's so good, it's so useful. Here we are in a culture where you can get something to eat anytime you want. You can have nuts in your pocket, you can have this, you can have that, you can just snack. I mean, we can just be grazing animals the entire day, right? And that's not healthy for us biologically, for one thing. We're made to have fasting periods. Our body actually assumes we're going to have fasting periods because, when you're chasing the antelope, you're not eating, and it might take you, ancient man didn't have a rifle. He could just kill the antelope. A sword, not a sword, but a spear or an arrow, and he might have to chase it for miles, right? And you don't eat during that time, and you don't eat when you don't catch the antelope, which is not an easy thing to do. So we're accustomed as a species, as a human organism, to go without food. It's just part of our makeup. And if you eat one meal a day, or even if you eat 2 or 3, but never in between meals, I dare you to try that. Right? I dare you to try that. That's hard. But it's great. It's great. If you have power over what you buy, and what's in the house, don't buy nuts. Don't buy potato chips. Don't buy snacks. If they're not there, you will not eat them. Pretty easy. Pretty easy. And just be in the habit of not eating between meals. And you'll find that's very powerful. Very, very powerful. That, I would always bless somebody to try to do that level of abstinence. But I would want a person to have pretty good spiritual life to be able to do things like, I'm not going to eat until 5 o'clock or something. I don't recommend that for someone unless they've come along a little ways. But I do bless that sometimes. But don't just do it on your own. Let's just get to the baseline. Wednesdays and Fridays, don't eat animal products. Don't eat animal flesh, animal products. Fish on an average Wednesday and Friday, you don't eat. Don't eat alcoholic beverages. And don't eat oil, or don't eat olive oil, if you want to put it that way. Because that might be a progression for you to just not eat olive oil, And then as you get better at that, maybe do other things as well, okay? So during Great Lent, it's the strictest fast of all. We have 4 fasting periods. Great Lent, a Nativity, and the Apostles' Fast, which is a variable length fast, and then, of course, Dormition fast. Great Lent is the strictest fast of the year. Dormition is the next, and then Nativity and the Apostles is the easiest. So Great Lent, on an average day, a weekday, it's a strict fast, just like a strict Wednesday, Monday through Friday. Saturday, you can always have olive oil and alcoholic beverages. Sunday as well. During Great Lent, we cannot. Well, we can. You can have anything you want. You can do what you want. But we say not to have fish, except on one day during Great Lent. What day is that? Annunciation. Annunciation, and of course, it's arguable whether or not Palm Sunday is considered Great Lent. We kind of consider it the transition from Great Lent to Holy Week, right? But you can have fish on Palm Sunday. You can have fish on Annunciation. But of course, you can have fish any day you want. It's your choice. But as far as fasting regulations, and if you want to be obedient to the church, you don't have fish except on those 2 days. By the way, sometimes people, like I'm at somebody's house and they say, oh, you can't have cheese today. I always say, yes, I can. I choose not to. Okay? It's your choice. You know, it's all free will. It's all free will. And when you give your will over to God, we're giving our will over to God because we're obeying the church's fasting regulations. It's fantastic. And it's really good. And if you're giving your will to God and you're new at this, and sometimes you know, I don't know, you see a ham sandwich that just hits you in the head and makes you eat it. All right. You know. But then you just pick yourself up and try to do better, you know. I mean, everything is a learning curve, right? And some of you, it's easy to fast. Some of you, it's really, really hard. But I would recommend, don't buy any of that junk that doesn't have any food value anyway. Don't buy any of that. Just go walk through a grocery store sometime and count the aisles and count how many aisles have food in it. Not a whole lot. All the soda's not food, right? We're not going to say beer is food, right? Beer and wine, right? You're not all the chips, all the, you know, and even if you're okay, nuts and things. But my goodness, have you ever seen what a serving is? If his serving is like, you know, a little tiny bit, and how much do you eat? You eat like half the thing, right? So I mean, you know, one little serving is like 110 calories, but you eat 960 calories, right? Very easily. So if you don't eat those things, you can have a successful fast, and it'll help you. And yeah, you'll get hungry sometimes, and you might get cranky, but you have to persevere. You have to persevere. One thing I do not recommend that you do, I don't like this when people do this. I always thought it was stupid. Like, they're in the middle of the fast and they start talking about hamburgers and stuff. They start to, I'm going to go to this place and then that place. No, you know, don't do that kind of food porn kind of stuff. Don't do it. Don't do it. You know, don't do it. I mean, you're fasting and you're trying to be dialed in, you know, and just talking about what you're going to do after the fast is just, I don't think it's a good idea myself. I don't think it's a good idea. And you're not really suffering that much. Nobody's suffering that much. I mean, suffering is, you know, people starving because there's no food. I went to Africa, and, you know, I was in places where people were, you know, they were not destitute and poor, but when some of them had been poor as children, and they said that they were happy if they had ugali for the day. That was it. Ugali is corn, basically maize flour, you know, cereal. Just that's it. Just corn mush. Just ugali. Just corn, flour, and water. They didn't even put salt in it. It's like eating cardboard. Okay, and that's many times all they had to eat for day after day after day. What did they have for breakfast? Ugali. What did they have for lunch? Nothing. What did they have for dinner? Ugali. That's it. Just corn. Corn and water. That's it. Heat it up, made it into a, you know, like a cereal. You know, what do? You know, we put salt, we put maple syrup, we put butter, you know, stuff like that. That's all they had. So we have it pretty easy right now. And it helps us to become a little more ascetical. I think as modern people, we should look for opportunities to be ascetical. Like, you know, if you're going somewhere and there's an escalator, why not take the stairs? You know, I generally do even when I'm carrying luggage, unless I'm, you know, late and I'm worried about making my flight. Sure, why not take the stairs? If you're at church and you want to come here, why do you need to drive your car here? Maybe you need to unload something, etc. Right? But otherwise, come on, man, it's a 3-minute walk. See, as moderns, we shouldn't be so lazy. You know, we're getting soft, and that's why we have so many things: cardiac problems and heart disease, so many things because, well, we don't live an ascetical life, and we don't work. You know, we go from one bubble to another. So fasting will really, really help you to be a little more in touch with yourself as a human being, and to recognize when I'm hungry, maybe I feel better. I feel better when I'm a little hungry. I really do. It's pretty amazing. You just feel more clarity. and I keep thinking, oh, I don't want to eat yet. I don't want to eat yet. I'm really starving, but okay, I'll eat a little bit. And it's always like, I don't want to eat. If I eat just a little bit, not a whole lot, but it is too much, So you get to the point where you don't want to eat a lot. It happens. It really does. Any questions about fasting? Any complaints about it? No complaints?
I don't know. I guess one thing that can interrupt, like sometimes I'll work through lunch. I guess you can't consider that a fast if you are too busy to eat, but...
Well, no, I mean
also like if you're going through a period where you're just eating beans once a day because, that's all you got.
Well, that's all you got then.
That's all you got, right?
Then just eat it. It's not going to kill you. I mean, I think that when we're hungry and we choose to follow the fast, I think there's a lot of clarity there. I think there's a lot of clarity, really. There's a lot of clarity. I can remember times like I'm fasting and I'm on a plane and they serve lunch or something, right? They don't do it as often anymore, but they used to, And what would it have? It would be a ham sandwich. So I would eat the bread, right? Yeah. But maybe the bread was all slathered with mayonnaise. So I wouldn't eat anything. You know what? I didn't die. I'm still here.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. For some of you, it's really difficult. All right. Then, you have to apply some effort to it, and maybe you won't be as successful in an absolute way, but you'll be successful in a spiritual way because it'll teach you about your faith. So whether you fast well or not, I don't care. What I care is that you try to fast. If you're not trying to fast, I really care, because then you're in trouble. Spiritually, you're not in good shape if you do not try to fast. So everybody who's an inquirer, catechumen, you should fast. And if you have trouble fasting to the rigid rules, talk to me. I'll make them less rigid. But don't just do it yourself. Anything else about fasting? There's a lot more we can talk about, but that's sort of a quick introduction. Okay.
Sometimes, I know this applied to me back 15 years ago, or 16 years ago or so. You might want to fast every day of the year. And the church's canons don't like that. They want you to recognize the church's fast. And nobody told me that. And it's a good idea. It's just a good idea.
I mean, if you don't want to have meat on Wednesday this week, you don't have to. Right? I mean, it's not like you're required, but if you normally eat meat, I think you probably should have meat. It's just good to just keep it simple. Just do what the church says. That's it.